Hi, folks. This is Harold Ree with the Paw Print Animal Rescue Podcast. Before we get to the talented and amazing Ellie Lee, a reminder that October is Adopt a Shelter Dog Month. Spread the word, support your local rescue organization, and who knows, maybe this month you'll find a special new member of your own family. Thanks, and on to the show.
This is Paw Print, an animal rescue community, episode 78. I'm Nancy Ree.
And I'm Harold Ree. Today's guest is Ellie Lee.
You know, it's not about fame. It's not all about all these things. He's like, it's about how you treat people. He's like, always be generous. To this day, that's all he says to me. He's like, just be generous.
Ellie is a TV host and actress, and she can be found hosting a music news show with iHeartRadio on DirecTV.
She's recently been on the Wendy Williams show, and her career spans several years, including VH1. She's an animal rescue hero with some incredible stories. If you want to learn more about Ellie Lee, go to our show notes at thisispawprint.com/78. That's the number 78.
The $1 million question, who am I? I'm a Korean-American girl living in New York City. I'm mostly a TV host, and I'm an actress as well. And I've been a TV host for a long time now. My passion in life, though, is dog rescue / animal rescue. I didn't grow up with animals of any kind until I was probably a junior in high school, and we got our first dog. And this was 15 years ago. So our first dog, his name is Toby, and we still have him. He's crazy. And he kind of was always kind of his own dog. You know, he only wants to be pet when he wants to be pet. And when we got our second dog is when I really started falling in love with animals. My second dog, Desi, and I really kind of bonded on a crazy level. And it's there that I really realized dogs are just so much more than just these cute furry little creatures. They're so unconditional in the way that they love. They're so loyal. I really started falling in love with dogs specifically around that time. And then I started I started really researching about animals in shelters and what's really going on. And, I was ignorant all my life, and I think a lot of people that I meet to this day are very ignorant about what really goes on in the shelter world and how many animals are being euthanized and all these crazy things. And I started volunteering like a crazy person. I was at different shelters volunteering, and I started really seeing that we have a serious problem with the amount of dogs that are being dropped off or abandoned, or, with backyard breeding and not enough people adopting because people think that, buying from a pet store or getting from a breeder is the right way to go, when in reality, the way to go is to get these dogs in shelters adopted. And my whole thing is adopt, don't shop. I think that's very important. So with Desi, it really started to snowball into this huge passion of mine, where since high school back in 2004, my mom and I fostered a lot together, and then I went off on my own, and I fostered over 25 plus dogs, mostly pit bulls. And it's been, my way of giving back, to the world. And my passion is animals, just because they literally are the most perfect, sinless things in the entire world. So I will literally go to the ends of the earth to save one. I've done some crazy things, but the passion is very real.
That's great. Okay. Well, for those folks who don't live in the New York City area, what's it like to foster or just really live with dogs in New York City?
That's a great question. A lot of people have a hard time. There's this Instagram photographer named The Doggist, and in this video that he does, he talks about how in different areas of New York, you find different kinds of breeds, right? So in the Upper West Side, you just find poodles, and then you go to Brooklyn, you find pit bulls. And it is very hard because we all live in very small apartments. The size of New York City apartments are no joke. And most of the time you're not living by yourself. So I think people find it hard to have a dog in New York City. But there are so many people with dogs, in New York, and I live in Brooklyn right now, and everywhere you turn, everybody has a dog. And so it's kind of part of our culture and in this city, but also it's just interesting how you can travel from different, just one block, and you'll see different types of dogs everywhere. So, we're a very dog-loving city. We do have definitely problems with our shelter numbers and the euthanization epidemic that's going on. But in terms of the dog population here, it is pretty huge.
I lived in New York City for a few years, and I definitely noticed in New York more than other parts of the country that dogs tend to really reflect the personality of the owners.
Yes.
Have you thought that too? Or
Oh my God, yeah. You see a girl in high heels, you look at her Louis Vuitton bag, she has a little dog. You look at, a hipster in Brooklyn, he has a pit bull. So it's like, it's very much like that. It's actually very funny too, when a dog looks like its owner here.
So you mentioned a little bit about crazy stories. What are some of the craziest animal rescue or dog stories that you have?
I think one of the craziest ones I ever did was I found a pit bull puppy being sold on Craigslist, and it was deep, deep in the Bronx. And if for those of you who don't know what the Bronx is like not the greatest area, especially if you're going, there at night. I went to college there, so like I know what it's like when it's real nighttime. And the owner of this puppy didn't want the puppy anymore. So I went down around midnight by myself, like on a Thursday night, and all the trains had shut down. And I went to this like really sketchy area in the middle of the night, and I rescued this puppy. We had to take around 3 buses and then a train from the city all the way back home. And then I came home and my roommates flipped out on me because I brought another puppy home. But yeah, stuff like that. I'll do things. I'll always think with my heart instead of my head. So I've a lot of rescue things like that.
You're in entertainment. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about when did you first get the bug to really either both the acting and the hosting and all that. Yeah. I mean, what really sparked your interest?
I grew up very traditional, conservative, Christian, Korean family. And most of my life, I was very quiet. I was very timid. And I think around middle school, around 7th or 8th grade, I really decided that I was realizing a lot of people were stepping all over me. And I knew innately that's not who I wanted to be. And so I can honestly say from like 8th grade on, I was very loud, very boisterous, very opinionated. And my biggest thing in high school is that I was obsessed with giving class presentations. Like I loved speaking in front of people. I loved being engaged with them. And I loved like all the attention on me. And I was like, oh my God, I want to be a TV host. And the ambition started in high school. And I was determined to be a TV host, whatever it took. And so, I in college, I did a lot of things. I did a lot of YouTube things, and I interviewed a lot of Korean pop stars, and I started my own interview show where I would interview local artists. And then I did some like parody videos and things like that. And then I landed my first gig at this website called Anime News Network. And I didn't know anything about anime, but I pretended to. I was a news host for them for a while. And then it kind of, just gradually my career started to go. And I then quit my job. I was at a marketing firm after college, and I quit it because I also got the acting bug. And so I was like, I'm going to become an artist. I'm just going to go for the dream. And everybody thought I was crazy. And my dad was really worried about me, but I was like, no, I'm going to make it. And I literally, for a year and a half, I walked dogs for a living. That was how I made my money. Oh. And I was auditioning, and I booked little commercials here and there and plays here and there. And then I became a host for MTV Korea for their music show in New York City called Top 10 Countdown. And so I did that, and I did a bunch of live shows in New York City with huge K-pop bands. And eventually I landed VH1, and I was their pop culture correspondent with Nick Lachey on their morning show. And I was also their news host. So I was on red carpets and press junkets and one-on-one interviews, and life was crazy. And since leaving VH1, life's still been a little crazy. I've done some indie films and acting wise, and I've been a host for People Style, and I do this digital show on bikini.com. I was just on the Wendy Williams show doing a segment with her called Inside Scoop. So it's like the career is going. It's a struggle. Everything is a struggle in this industry, but it's going. I think eventually the goal is to be very successful in what I do and kind of create a strong foundation and a name, and then I can go out and just have a rescue farm. Right. That's kind of the goal. Yeah.
When people think of acting, right, I think people get the concept, at least that's my understanding, is that, hey, you just have to audition a ton. You do have to find that quote unquote lucky break. How would you compare hosting?
Hosting's the same thing. You audition a ton, you get rejected most of the time. And then when somebody notices that maybe you are great and you are different, that's when you book it. But it's hard. Everything in this industry is very hard, and it's saturated with everybody. I've been to so many auditions where I walk in and I'm like, oh, everybody looks like me and everybody's wearing the same thing as me. And it's all about how come I can't say that word? It's all about
differentiating yourself.
Yes. Thank you, Harold. Yourself from everybody else, So I think that's the skill that I've, been honing for years, is how am I different from everybody else? How can I stand out and succeed in this? But yes, TV hosting is just as hard as acting. Booking something is a miracle.
What are some of the ways you try to stay true to yourself, but at the same time be unique?
I mean, it took a long time for me to stop being a yes person. I think that I was also kind of not a copycat, but I always saw things. I'm like, oh, that's what I should be doing, or I should be like this, or I should be like that. And I think that being at VH1 really taught me to be just myself. And, myself is just, I'm kind of quirky and a little bit awkward, but loud and can be funny without meaning to be funny. So I think I've just kind of started to realize what my strengths are as a host, and I try to be myself 100% authentically as much as I can as a TV host. And I think that's what makes each individual stand out, but that's what makes me stand out, amongst TV hosts.
I was watching one of your videos, and I think the one that really struck me was the adolescent girl with the braces and the headgear.
Yes, teenage Ellie.
Yeah, what's that? What is that based on? Is that yourself or a friend or someone else?
Oh, yeah. So my producers wanted me to play this character called Teenage Ellie, where we go back in the 90s and she just reads from her diary about boy banders or heartthrobs. And so Nick Lachey would have guests like Joey McIntyre from New Kids on the Block, or Nick Carter from Backstreet Boys, or we had James Vanderbeek from Dawson's Creek. And so they would come and we would play this game where we would go into Ellie's bedroom, and then I would read a diary entry, and then they would figure out what era or what photo or what time in their life that I was talking about. So it was just a really funny, silly thing that we used to do. But that character comes from how much of a teeny bopper I was in the 90s, when I was obsessed with NSYNC and Spice Girls.
I thought it was hysterical, and definitely I remembered it. It was just this is gonna stay in my head for a while. It's just because it's adorable. At the same time, it's we've all been there, right? That super awkward phase of being a teenager. So yeah. Going back to animal rescue, if someone was going to ask you, hey, Ellie, I live in New York City, I totally want to do this, but I live a typical New York City life. I mean, what would you say?
I think people who come up to me and ask me about fostering, I think there is a serious interest there, and when there is a serious interest there, I really let them know this fostering is not a joke. This is not something where you have a fluffy thing running around your house and you come in and out as you please. If you're going to foster, especially in New York City with this crazy life that we all live, you have to be dedicated, and you have to know that this is a really big responsibility, and you're going to make a lot of sacrifices when you're fostering. And that's what I've done. I made a decision when I was on my own, and I was like, this is really what I want to do. I love this so much, and I want to be helping them as much as I can. If I can help them one dog at a time, then I will. And I sacrificed a lot, and you sacrifice nights out and all these things, and your schedule revolves around the dog. But if you're willing to do that, and if you're willing to go those extra miles to make sure that this dog that you're fostering has the best home before it goes to its forever home, then I would say yes, for sure, do it. But if you're only 80% there, then I would say wait till you're 100% there, because it's a serious commitment, especially when you're doing it your own.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, right? It's if you foster and then back out, that's almost worse than not fostering, right?
Yeah,
so, yeah. Any fosters that really,
oh my God.
You could even talk about your current one, right? But any fosters that really have made it?
Oh my God. Look, you're making me reminisce now. I had this dog named Nala. Nala was like this beautiful white. She had these like brown freckles on her, and she had one blue eye and then one green eye. And she came to me wrapped up in bandages, like all over her limbs. And she had, all these bite marks everywhere. It's basically her mother, and her brother were living in a city in New Jersey called Newark. And through the brutal winter of here on the East Coast, they were living outside on a chain, fending for themselves. And she came to me so messed up. And the first day that I brought her home, she would not come out of her crate. She was salivating a lot. She didn't trust me. She was shaking. And literally by the end of day 3 together, we were inseparable. We were best friends. I fell in love so fast with her. We created such an insane bond that I was really thinking, like, maybe this is the dog for me. Like, maybe this is my time to adopt, and really think about, kind of figuring it all out. I was still a dog walker. I was still like a starving artist, but I was like, maybe this is the time to adopt this dog. And that's when I booked VH1. And then my schedule got so insane. And I met this family who fell in love with her. And eventually she did get adopted out to them. And she's doing amazing with them. They love her so much. But that dog, to this day, almost 3 years later, like, still makes it makes me have butterflies, and like I get teary eyed because I think about her, and I remember just loving her so much. And it's just a crazy kind of love that you can't really explain.
Thanks for sharing that. That's an awesome story. Which organizations do you usually foster with?
I foster with a lot of organizations, mostly Flyaway Home Rescue in New Jersey, but I work closely with a new group called Redemption Rescues. And I try to really work with I try to foster dogs a lot from this city in Newark, or this city called Paterson, where they just have a pound and they just euthanize left and right. They don't even give them a week. And so I really try to foster dogs that really need help from those areas, because the shelters there are just atrocious, and the treatment of them it's despicable, and it's terrible. So I really try to work with dogs that come from there. Sometimes I'll look at a dog on Facebook. My recent foster right now, I saw him on a video that was being shared around Facebook, and I was like, okay, that's the dog that I need to like love and, give some TLC to. And so I worked with a certain rescue group for that. But most of the time, I work with specific groups who, need fosters constantly. But sometimes there will be times where I'm like, oh my God, I need this dog, and I need to have this dog. So, yeah.
Now, Brooklyn, New York to Paterson, New Jersey, I mean, that is a little bit of a distance. How do you make the connection?
My boyfriend and I just moved in together, so he has a car. And he is becoming an amazing dog rescuer. Like, before, he definitely loved dogs, and then he met me and he was like, whoa. Like, he literally told me, he's like, I didn't even know that adopting was a thing. Like, he knew of the rescue world, like he's heard of it, but he didn't really know of what a big problem it is, or how, he didn't even know that pet stores were a bad thing until he met me. And then now his world has changed, and he is so ride or die. Like, even our foster dog right now is very sick, and he's been just driving us everywhere back and forth from Jersey. And also my dad owns businesses in New York, so he comes from New Jersey, and he always has a car in the city. So in case of an emergency, I always take his van, and so we figure it out.
Oh, that's great. Awesome. Awesome. What other animals have made an impact on you?
Oh, my God. Okay. I read a book called Eating Animals around 2.5 years ago, and it changed my eating habits completely. I just have a great love for animals, and I think factory farming in the United States is just I just will never understand how the human race can treat another live being the way that they do. And so I've cut out meat completely. It took me a little bit to get off chicken. And then when I read this book, I was like, oh my God, I'm totally off. I have a huge love for horses and cows and pigs. Like, to me, pigs are just like, there's something about them that make me melt. It's just how much suffering a lot of these animals go through, and how much unnecessary torture and abuse and neglect, and it's just terrible. And so in general, anything that is wiggly and it moves and it can love me back, I'm obsessed with.
There's obviously plenty of folks in animal rescue community who still eat meat and all that. But it is interesting, as I'm interviewing more and more people, how there is a growing interest of animal rescuers either becoming vegetarian or vegan.
I struggled with it for a little bit, because I was like, how am I eating meat and other animals, but I'm like rescuing dogs and telling people not to hurt these animals, but I'm like eating the ones that are being brutally tortured and then killed for me to eat. And so I was really conflicted with that for a really long time. And then I read this book and I realized the atrocities of factory farming in our country. And I was like, okay, this is it, you know? And I understand that carnivores will be carnivores. Everybody is going to eat meat regardless of what's going on, you know, and a lot of people won't pay attention to it. But my whole thing is, if you're going to eat meat, it's our responsibility to know where it's coming from, you know, and why aren't these animals, why are they just churned out and bred and fed? I'm sorry, I can go on a whole thing, but I just think that we need to respect animals in a way that they're not respected. And it just breaks my heart when we care so much about dogs, but then we're keeping a pig in a gestation crate and she's never allowed to move. And then we just brutally torture her and kill her. Like, right. It just didn't make sense to me. So yeah, I definitely am at a point where I'm like, okay, I respect all animals. And you know, so it's definitely a process. It can't happen overnight, but
sure,
yeah.
Sure. You want to talk a little bit about Hank?
Hank is my boyfriend and I's first foster dog together. Hank is a pit bull. We don't even know how old he is, but basically Hank was found walking around Newark with puncture wounds all over his body. So this rescue woman was driving in her car and she saw him on the road limping and bleeding. And so she took him in and he went to the vet for 2 weeks and he stayed there until he healed and he came to us. And if I could describe Hank to you, it would be he's magic. I'm going to start crying. But he is so loving and so cuddly and so perfect. And he's been through so much in his young life and he's going through a lot currently. You know, he was starting to act a little funny around 3 days ago. He was, he's kind of sick and then he collapsed twice and we finally took him to the ER and they think that he has an autoimmune disease, but they can't figure it out yet. But he's not Hank right now. He's going through a lot. So we're just, sending prayers and positive vibes that he'll be okay because my boyfriend and I definitely want him back in the house and just being himself. But his Instagram is Hank the Gentleman because the way he sits, he always crosses his legs together all the time. He's always crossing his legs together and just sitting up like a gentleman. And he's just the best thing ever. And he loves the car. He loves car rides. And he's not like a big toy. He just wants to like sleep and just cuddle next to you. And if you guys can follow us on Instagram, that'd be great. And if you could send us positive vibes to, let Hank know that he's going to be okay, that'd be great too.
Yeah. Nothing cuddles better than a pit bull, right?
Yep. Nothing cuddles better than a pit bull.
Right. How do folks find Ellie Lee, whether it's your next big TV hosting, your next big movie?
I hope that I'm on a TV thing too. I have some things, boiling in the water, but this industry is funny. You think it's gonna be the next big thing, and then something happens. And I think I'm to the point now where I've gotten really used to the fact that, like, a lot of things don't really work out in this industry. But yeah, just watch out for me because you never know when I'm gonna pop out on your screen. But you can find me on ellie-lee.com, or you can follow me on my Instagram, which is yo_EL. Or Snapchat. I'm obsessed with Snapchat. Snapchat is my favorite social media form, and I'm an absolute fool there. And you can also follow Hank there because he's in all my Snapchats, which is yo-Ellie, ELLIE. And that's how you guys can find me and stalk me and figure out what I'm doing next because I don't know.
So where'd you grow up and how'd you end up in Brooklyn?
I grew up in New Jersey, born and raised in Jersey. I lived in the city for a while, and then, the city can be quite overwhelming, and I met my boyfriend in Brooklyn, and I fell in love with Brooklyn, so we ended up moving to Brooklyn.
I've met a lot of folks who left Brooklyn, like, they grew up there maybe, 40, 50 years ago, and now they're in California or they're in other parts of the country. So can you maybe tell people, what is this big renaissance that's going on in Brooklyn right now?
Yeah, Brooklyn is changing. They're saying, Brooklyn's like the new New York City. It's very cool and it's not as crazy as the city and the people are more chill and everyone's more relaxed here. And it's just it's becoming a really, really beautiful place to live. And, I live in kind of the heart of Brooklyn in a place called Williamsburg. And it's already flooding with tourists. People are really catching on like, oh, this is the place that you should be going to. And, it's just the restaurants, it's the people, it's the places to hang out. It's a kind of atmosphere that the city doesn't give you. So yeah, I'm very happy with, it's funny, there's an L train, and the L train takes you from First Avenue, which is in the city. And then the next stop is a place called Bedford, and Bedford is right in the heart of Brooklyn. And as soon as you get off the train into Bedford from First Avenue, you're like, whoa, like it just feels like the stress of life in the city has just dropped and you're just chilling. Like, it's a really crazy feeling. And if anybody ever wants to come to Brooklyn, you got to check out Williamsburg. It's awesome.
Nice ambassador for Brooklyn. That's
oh
great.
My God, I know, right? I should get paid.
When it comes to entertainment, you obviously got New York, you have LA. Mm-hmm. Any temptations to ever move out to California or any other place?
Yeah, I go to LA a lot for meetings or for shootings and things like that. For shoots. That sounded weird. Shootings for shoots. I love LA, but I'm such a born and raised East Coaster that I don't know if I can ever adjust to the LA pace, because in the city, everything about living in New York is fast. Everything is just on the go. And when I go to LA, it's so calm and like cool, and I'm just like whoa, 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 and I'm like so spastic all the time. But I am down to move to LA because of the weather, but I can't do a car thing. I lived in Jersey for a really long time, and like the traffic, the car thing, that's the only thing that really kills me.
I made a crucial mistake in parenting. So we were in LA just a few days ago. My son got his driver's permit 3 weeks ago, and we already had him driving in LA. And I think it was a little bit stressful for both him and my wife.
Yeah, it's definitely not.
It's like the hardest place to drive.
It really is. And I props to you guys. I don't know how you guys do with the traffic.
Yeah. Although, I would say this: when I was living in New York, driving was hard, but in a weird way, it's more fun in the sense that people just kind of give each other that little bit of space to get around. Whereas in LA, it's definitely a lot more aggressive, is my opinion. So as we wrap up, anything else that you'd like to share about animal rescue?
I'm such an advocate for, adopting from shelters and not going to breeders. We have such a problem with backyard breeding, and we have such a problem of neutering and spaying. And my whole thing is, guys, like, let's help animals by doing good things for them, by spaying and neutering, by controlling the population that's going on, the overpopulation that's going on. And really, if you're looking for an animal, visit your local shelters, visit, rescue groups around you, because there's so many amazing animals, and we need to fight this stigma that a lot of people have, animals in shelters or animals in rescue groups are all sick and they're old and they have problems. Like, that's not the case at all, And so I think we can help them by adopting, and we can also help them by not shopping, at pet stores and encouraging puppy mills, and not going to breeders and grabbing a toy poodle from them. I think that we need to just spread the message of adopting and the importance of it.
Well said. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
What's the best life advice you've ever received?
My dad, from I was a kid, he always said to me, he's like, Ellie, it's not about money. It's not about fame. It's not all about all these things. He's like, it's about how you treat people. He's like, always be generous. To this day, that's all he says to me. He's like, just be generous. And like, that's something that I'm definitely working on, And I think that my life advice at this age in my life is be good to the people around you, really stay humble in whatever you do, and also try to give back in some way. I think that we live in a generation where it's all about me, 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 me. And I think that stepping out of that and giving back in some way, whatever your passion is really important in shaping, who you eventually want to become.
We want to thank Ellie Lee for sharing her story and for the incredible heart she has for animal rescue. If you want to learn more about Ellie, including a video that shows off her acting talent, go to our show notes at thisispopprint.com/78.
If you want to meet me or Nancy on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, look for This Is Paw Print, all one word. You can also listen to more episodes of Paw Print on your favorite podcast app like iTunes, SoundCloud, or Pocket Casts. Make sure to hit subscribe to get the latest episodes immediately. We want to say thank you to all of you for sharing Paw Print with your friends and family. And remember, you spread a positive message of love and peace by saving an animal. Don't forget that October is Adopt a Shelter Dog Month, and see you next time with another great guest on Paw Print.
Paw Print is a production of EVER Education.
You can't handle the truth.